Call the meeting to order for Planning Board, May 10th, 2016. I'll ask that you all rise for a pledge of allegiance and a moment of prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do have a quorum with 6 members present. And before we go any further, I'd like to introduce Mr. John McCauley. Welcome to the board, and thank you for volunteering to serve.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. Approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? And we'll call for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The agenda is approved. Does anyone wish to disqualify themselves from any case being heard tonight? In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it's the duty of every planning board member to avoid conflicts of interest. Does any planning board member have any known conflict of interest with respect to any matters coming before the planning board today? If so, please identify the conflict and refrain from any participation in the particular matter involved. On new business A, driveway requirements. As you guys know, this is a discussion that I have initiated, but it's not for any personal benefit to myself, just an issue with a rule that I think the planning board needs to look at. Are there any changes to the minutes? If not, I'll call for a motion to adopt the minutes.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The minutes are adopted. All right, under old business, we have PB 1609, Currituck County, request to amend the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 3, Zoning Districts, and Chapter 6, Subdivision and Infrastructure Standards for lots that exceed the County Water Supply System Connection Distance Formula. Ms. Voliva?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't cover this in the same detail that we covered at the last meeting. We very detailed into this. So what I'll do is just basically give you an overview of what this text amendment consists of, and then go over the maps with you and answer any questions you may have. So at the board's retreat, the Board of Commissioners retreat earlier this year, they directed the planning staff to develop a text amendment that would address the county's water supply and extension standards in areas that are not currently served by county water. Back 2014, I believe it was, and over the past 3 years, the board has changed this regulation several times and looked at text amendments even more so. From applicants other than the county. Right now, what the ordinance does, if you're proposing a subdivision and you happen to be outside of an area that is served by county water, so there's no county water within your vicinity, and you're outside of the formulated distance, which is based on the total number of lots you are creating and your distance from the water line, then you are required to either extend the water line to your subdivision and within your subdivision, or you have to post a performance guarantee to guarantee those infrastructure improvements will be installed at some point during the development process or post-development process whenever the system is extended out to those areas. So it puts a burden, not only are you having to place that money, set aside that money for the infrastructure improvements, but you're also having to install a well in these areas. So at the board's direction, we looked at what's the best viable way to do this, and it seems as though most of these areas are in the agricultural zoning district that are not served by county water. So what we proposed are some changes to the density allocations. If you're currently on county water or you want to connect to the county water, it would allow you to develop at 0.33 units per acre. That would be unchanged from the current regulation. And if you had no county water and you did not want to connect to the county water because you're outside of that formulated distance, then it would reduce it slightly a little more than in half by allowing a density of 0.15 units per acre. It does establish a minimum lot size for a minor subdivision to be 3 acres in size as opposed to 40,000 square feet. So let's say, for instance, you happen to have a piece of property that's zoned residential single-family mainland, and you're outside of the formulated distance. What do you do? So you can either choose to connect, or you could choose to downzone your property to agricultural, and you could do a subdivision based on the density allocations being outside of that formulated distance and not connecting to county water. That's kind of an overview of what the text amendment is. It takes away the mandatory connection, at least in the agricultural district. It does still establish it and maintains that in the residential and all other districts. I have a map before you that shows water lines, and this shows greater than 6 inches, parcels that are outside of the 1,000-foot buffer that the board asked me to prepare, and that's the blue and white stippled areas. They're out in the outer lying areas of the county. And it also has the zoning districts on there. This is the northern section of the county, and then the southern section of the county. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. And these are parcel specific, not buffer specific.
Any questions for staff? So the requirement's it's not removed from residential, it's only agricultural. Would there be a possibility we'd have spot zoning issues if somebody did have a residentially zoned parcel and wanted to develop without water? Would that be a consideration?
There are, and I think this has come up on a couple of rezonings that you've had before you, there are criteria that are established for consideration when you're looking at rezoning properties, whether or not a parcel could be considered spot zoning. And if you can meet those or address those criteria, then generally it's not considered spot zoning. If you were doing a larger subdivision, then that's probably not going to be an issue because you're going to have acreage there.
Right.
You can still do minor subdivisions with a minimum 3 acres for the individual lots.
Without
Family
water.
subdivisions are still exempt.
Right. Okay.
So that's where you probably have the smaller lot issues, would be minors or family. And those could easily be addressed through an increased lot size with the minor or a family subdivision. And always available is the exempt subdivisions, those lots that are greater than 10 acres in size.
Right. I guess my question was, with the density, it goes to 0.15, right? Basically,
Correct.
it's 15 lots and 100 acres.
Correct.
So if someone had a 100-acre residential parcel and they were 5,000 feet, it's a crazy example, 5,000 feet off, was there thought placed to not requiring a rezoning to ag and just have that a standard? If you don't connect to county water, then that's your density across any zoning district? Or
Well, we've just recently amended the ordinance to address some of the other residential density calculations, and we've modified them to kind of tier them up to get them, when you get to the MXR zoning district,
Right.
then you have the higher densities, and then the next tier down would be the residential that would connect. and then your agricultural, which is generally not always your full service areas. We have a lot of residentially zoned properties, the single family mainland, that are in full service areas. So it would make sense that they would connect to the county water. And if they're not served and they happen to be outside of the formulated distance, then it would make probably more sense for them to be a different zoning district.
Any other questions?
What is the approximate percentage of agricultural zoning within the county as a whole?
70?
It's like 70, yeah.
70 some percent?
I can't remember if that's the main one or as a whole. I think it's 70% of the main one.
Yeah.
I remember that number. It's
Yeah,
around
so
that.
I thought it was around 70.
Okay.
Figured that out when we did the maps in 2013.
Yes, I want to say it's around, but you're right, I don't know if that includes any of the other areas, which could have been before the zoning changes.
Did we calculate the percentage of the agricultural zoned land that falls within this area outside of the 1,000 foot buffer?
I did not.
And as we stated in the pre-meeting before this meeting, much of this land, especially in the northern end of the county, is marshlands or wetlands, and they probably would not be developed anyway.
Most likely that is correct. There's a good deal of that. One thing to point out, you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, on a 100-acre tract of land, just to give you a ballpark as to what effect that would have if it were agricultural. On a 100-acre tract of land, you would have to do a conservation subdivision, so you'd be required to do that. So 50 acres of that 100 would go into open space. So your developable acreage that you would change your lots to would be about 45 acres, because you have to take out 10% for roads and that type of thing, stormwater. So
Get 22 lots.
with 0.33 units per acre, that would give you 33 lots on 45 acres if you were on county water, and 15 lots on 45 acres if you were on a private well.
Right.
That sounds like it's a little bit in conflict with the number that's shown on conservation subdivision on packet page 18. It says it's 2 acres for conservation subdivision, not 3.
On what page is that?
Packet page 18, page 4 of 8. Or at the top right, 2.A.
That's your minimum lot size, 2 acres.
So if,
The density that I gave, that was density. 15 lots would be your density on 45 acres.
So it's basically cutting the density in half.
That's your minimum too, so obviously it can be larger than that.
right.
Okay. So that's an agricultural, and in residential, it still is as is.
As is.
Yeah, they got to connect or pay the.
There's no change with that one.
Okay. All right. So no change with residential. This is basically giving agricultural folks a way to develop at lower densities without the fees. Is that the gist of it?
Yes. Without having to post the performance guarantee
Right.
as well as install the well.
Right. All right. Any questions? I don't have anyone signed up for the public hearing. Sir, I think you're with the newspaper, right?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to ask any questions about this? You have our undivided attention. It's a big crowd tonight.
No, I continue to listen on.
Okay, yeah, yes, sir. All right. I close the public hearing. Discussion among the board?
I like the fact that with each zoning district, it appears that the county's working towards more of a graduated system of, depending on the zoning, it increases with the amount of potential land areas, which will help to protect farmland, ultimately, the way this is set up now.
I've got one last question. I'm sorry. In a minor, that same 100-acre tract, what happens with their first 5? Is it also subject to the 0.15 density?
3-acre minimum.
Okay. So that's not really changed. Well, it was 1 acre before.
It was 40,000
So
square feet.
you can do 3 acre the first 5, and then the remainder parcel has this 0.15. But the whole parcel.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct. See, right now, minors are required to connect or pay the fees. So
Okay, okay.
that rule does apply to minors, and this does give them an ability to do a minor subdivision and not really have to, at a larger lot, and not have to pay the fees for water impact and
And that would actually
Structure
help a
extension.
developer.
And just remember, you can always do family subdivision lots at 1 acre without any connection requirement. So if you're a landowner and you in fact are cutting lots out for children or grandchildren, that's up to 5 still remains an option that in all instances has no requirement to connect to the water system.
Right.
Are there still limitations being on the generational aspect of how many more times it can be subdivided on a family subdivision after the 5th?
yes, there's a 10-year period. You wait 10 years, and then your clock will start
Okay.
again.
To make sure that was still in effect.
It's still
I
in there.
recalled there was
Okay.
that in there.
I have a question about, because you mentioned you went this 100-acre plot that we're generalizing, and you said about half of it, or a large part of the county, land like that is wetlands. Are they able to farm wetlands?
Well, generally, you're probably not going to farm wet areas, and if it's prior cultivated farmland, and it was wet at one particular time, then it's no longer jurisdictional by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Doesn't mean it's not still jurisdictional by the state, but most likely you're non-jurisdictional by the federal government if it's prior converted farmland.
The same 100-acre parcel, if we do 4 lots that are 3 acres each, so we're taking 12 acres for our minor subdivision, and we've got the remainder, which is 88 acres. Does the .15 apply to the remaining 88 or to the original entire 100?
If you're doing your density on your next subdivision, what happens is there's a timing aspect for that too. If you do your minor and then you come right in and do your major right after that, then your minor counts towards some of your allocation numbers.
Okay, yeah, we
For-
talked about
yeah.
that. What was that time
It's
frame?
5 years.
5 years, okay. So the original 4 lots at 3 acres, you'd have 12 acres, and then 10 years later, the next generation comes in or whatever, the 88 acres is where the .15 applies.
That's correct.
Okay, good.
I guess a matter of fact, the 88 acres, you could then do 4 more 3-acre lots. Does it
Every 5
reset? Does it?
years?
No, it still
Minor
counts in the
doesn't
parent
reset,
tract.
but
Never
yeah.
mind.
The only thing that resets is the family.
The
And although
family.
you could do a minor, you could come back, let's say you do a 5-lot minor and you come back in 10 years, you can still do 5-lot family
No, okay.
if you wanted to.
Okay.
That's right. So yeah, it doesn't reset the minor count, but you don't have to include those original
That's
lots in all your
correct.
calculations.
Then that second set of 5 lots would be subject to the 10-year
They would be.
subdivisional
That's
generational
correct.
aspect of it.
All right. Well, that was my main question, the .15. Is it applying to the 100 acres or the 88 that's left? And it sounds like it'd be the 88 that's left 5 years later.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Discussion? With that, I'll call for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve PB 1609 Currituck County with staff recommendations because the request is consistent with the land use plan, because it endorses the utilities extension policies that focus water and sewer services, and it protects farmland from development pressures brought upon by such utilities.
All right.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All right, moving on to new business. These are new business A, B, and C are discussion items among the board. The first discussion item is driveway requirements. We spoke about briefly at the last meeting. For a quick summary of what we just talked about, the county, as of 2013, had new residential driveway requirements, and also added a condition that the driveway requirements had to be met prior to issuance of a CO. If I can find my paper, I'll read what the UDO says. Except for development within the SFR district, single-family dwellings on lots of 3 acres in area or larger, and as provided for in section 5.1.6.f, alternate materials, all off-street parking, loading, and circulation areas shall be surfaced with asphalt, concrete, brick, crushed stone, pavers, aligned concrete strips, or an equivalent material. These materials shall be maintained in a smooth, well-graded condition. We build custom homes mostly in Currituck County. 99% of the homes that we build are in Currituck County on the mainland. So I'm just speaking from experience. Again, this is no real benefit. Bless you.
Thank you.
No real benefit to myself personally. It's just working with customers. I like to leave them as many options as possible, and I think when we're dealing with the public as well as a planning board, we want to let the public have options unless there's a real good reason not to. I think that's with government in general. Leave options unless there's a good reason not to, that if, adversely affects someone else or health and safety type issues. As far as the timing of it, which is not a UDO issue, that's more of an in-house staff issue, and maybe just something that we're working through because it's new. Requiring the driveway be complete at CO causes several of the issues, like on the piece of paper I gave you. Mostly, I have customers request the driveway be poured later so that moving trucks can go in without tearing up a new concrete driveway. There are other options. I'm saying concrete because that's where the issues tend to arise. It takes concrete, I think it's 21 days to reach 2,000 PSI. So it takes some time before you would want a truck pulling in. There's also the aspect of worker traffic in and out on the driveway that potentially would be poured 30 days prior to the final inspection. So you've got oil stains, you've got cracked and broken concrete. The only way around that, as far as that being an issue, is have another access to the site that's not the new driveway, and then you also run into issues of filling in a ditch for a temporary access, which I don't even think is allowed by the UDO or maybe DOT, and potentially causing other drainage issues as well. So what I would propose is to remove that in-house requirement to driveway complete within 30 days of CO. It just leaves options for the customer. And again, this is not, it's my benefit to do the driveway as soon as possible because the appraiser comes out, and if he doesn't say the home is 100% complete, the contractor doesn't get his final draw. So this is more a benefit to the public, giving homeowners, people building new houses here in the county, every reasonable option. And if you're looking at a job site that has had traffic in and out of it for 6 months or so, concrete trucks, dumpster trucks, you've got access to the site. There's been traffic in and out of it. It's just not as convenient as having a finished driveway. So I agree with having some kind of a driveway standard. I just think it's the timing of it. The other question that I had or suggestion I had as far as the acceptable materials to allow shell sand, which has been used for driveways here in the county for many, many years. And as far as I know, in a residential application has never been an issue. We use it a lot during construction, especially on muddy lots, because trucks can get in and out no problem. And they're big trucks, concrete trucks, dropping off lumber, dropping off shingles, the big drywall boom trucks. So if it were any type of safety consideration, I've never compared the weight of a fire truck versus a full concrete truck or a full lumber truck, but I would suspect that they're somewhat comparable. And this material, it's really good. I've got a lot of experience with it. I had a picture, Susan. Did you happen to get that email that I sent?
I did not.
Okay, no problem, no problem. I'd sent a picture of an example of a shell sand driveway, and what you would see is that no ruts, no potholes, and it stays in good shape for a long time. Bobby, I think you've had some experience with the material.
Yeah, we use it a lot on the field paths.
Mm-hmm.
They've been trucks running in and out. Some places they've had log trucks running in and out. Like I say, I'm not sure the comparable to the fire truck, but it's got to be close. You know.
Yeah.
And it's easy to maintain, you know, once it gets established, pretty hard base.
Yeah, and the customers I've had that would say they prefer shell sand over gravel or crushed stone is the maintenance aspect of it. If you get a pothole in gravel, it's pretty hard to fix. I mean, I did that all growing up. My parents had a gravel driveway, and you got to chip it, and break it apart, where the shell sand, even after it's packed in hard, you can work it a little bit. And it's been my experience that the potholes and the ruts tend to happen less frequently in the shell sand than in the gravel, I guess because it packs in tighter. It's smaller granules, smaller pieces. So that was my only two items on the driveway requirements. It's the timing of it and the materials, and I appreciate any feedback that you guys have or questions.
Well, I think it makes certainly good sense because, A, like you said, the banks and or the appraiser is going to be controlling the last part of the money in order to make sure that the driveways are finished. Second of all, the customer is. And the customer is not going to let you off the hook if he wanted a concrete driveway and you didn't put it in.
Right.
You know.
Well, I think what I'm trying to point out is that I don't think this has ever been an issue before. And the rule could be changed in time if it were to become an issue, but I think the implementation of the rule is maybe causing issues, not the lack of the rule that we had previously.
I have one question on it, though. You had mentioned earlier in the meeting that it takes 30, 60 days for the concrete to really dry. Does that mean the customer moves in and then 30 days later he's got his driveway, but then he can't drive his own car on the driveway?
Well, it takes 21 days for, depending on a lot of conditions, heat and humidity and everything, 21 days for it to get to 2,000 PSI. For a small regular vehicle, car, truck, after about 5 days, you're fine. Okay. I'm talking moving trucks and U-Hauls and things like. I would
not.
not.
Talking about standard vehicles.
No. This time of year, we could pour a driveway and the owner could drive on it in about 5 days. Okay. No problem with that. In fact, I've had them driven on the next day. Anybody's familiar with construction? Yeah, if you don't put giant flares and roadblocks, the guys are going to park as close as they can to the house. So there's been issues with driveways getting poured too early, none that I know of them being poured after move-in. But that's a good question. And concrete cures for a long time. I mean, you can read the Hoover Dam's still curing, but it's so thick. But for what we do, 4 to 6 inches thick, I think 21 days, they say, has got you at 2,000 PSI.
And it's not necessarily a drying action, it's a chemical reaction.
It's a chemical reaction, that's right. And as far as the shell sand material, if we read what's allowed right now, pavers, I would think depending on what kind of base pavers are sitting on, I would argue that the shell sand's going to make for a nicer driveway long term than pavers.
May even be the base for the pavers.
Right. It would be the best base for the pavers, yeah. And the pavers actually aren't really doing much of anything except for looks. It's the base material is what makes pavers effective. Even if it has a minimum thickness, we normally put it down. It varies. I mean, 4 would be the minimum, up to 6 and even 8 inches, depending on, because we try to crown it in the middle and everything too. But again, this is just about leaving options for the customer. Through my experience, things that and the customers are the public. That's who we're serving here on this board. It's not just my customers, but just people that live in the county.
In my experience as an appraiser, I've heard more homeowners complain that people drove on their driveway than them not having a driveway completed at the time of a move-in.
Exactly. I mean, I think having the driveway prior to CO will cause far more issues as far as the public's concerned than doing it after they've moved in, which is what they tend to prefer, the customer does.
Having a temporary access would probably be the best solution if it were feasible, but most instances it's not feasible. You've got a hard enough time keeping people off of one driveway, let alone a second one. And if you use the second one frequently, you're going to have a stable enough area where it crosses a ditch area just before the road. You might as well do that on the original driveway instead of forking out the bucks to do that and then having to remove it later.
Yeah, that's right. I think a secondary access is it's an extra cost, and it also is potentially breaking UDO and DOT rules and maybe causing drainage issues.
So let's do this. Let's look at the timing from an administrative standpoint. I'll just go back to the office, or Donna will, or somebody will, and we'll just tell the permitting staff that, probably more important than the building inspectors, because I don't want them to turn down the CO. If the CO is prepared to be issued and the driveway is not paved yet, then we'll issue it with the condition that the driveway be finished within, we'll just say 30 days for now. And unless it's a problem, we'll just kind of proceed that way. Because quite frankly, if the building inspectors didn't start looking, we probably wouldn't be talking about this anyway. So
Yeah, it started 3 weeks ago.
yeah, but I don't want to get in a situation. I don't want to like bond it. I don't want to chase bonds. I don't want to go back out in 30 days. We're just going to do it in kind of an honor system.
Yeah.
Issue the CO, 30 days. If it's not there, I'm guessing we're going to hear from the homeowner or somebody, and then we'll try to deal with it then. Now, I will say one thing that Lori mentioned in full disclosure. Once the CO is done, I guess this is probably always the case, but at the end of the day, if 30 days passes and the driveway's not improved like it was supposed to be, the county's only enforcement action's really against the property owner, probably. But I mean, I guess that's the case regardless, right? If we don't issue the CO because the driveway's not poured, that's going to be something the property owner and the contractor are going to have to work out somehow. But I just want to be clear that if we ever got into a problem where you got to make it work, I mean, the only thing we can really go against is most likely the property owner. But hopefully they have protections in their contract with the contractor to avoid that. So,
And ultimately,
and obviously the building permit the county issues probably shows a concrete, asphalt, or whatever type of driveway. So it should be on the permit
It's on the site plan.
that's approved. Yeah. So we'll
Well,
do that for the timing if that works for this board. And instead of writing a new ordinance, we'll just see if we can kind of figure it out and not write one unless we
And
have
that
to.
pretty much leaves it to how it's always been. I mean, they've always been done as an honor system for generations. They've always been done, whatever the rules were at the time. But yeah, I think that's a good way to approach it. It gives that 30 days for the owner to move in, decide what they want to do with their landscaping and everything. Because that's another aspect. If you've got driveway in already, the owner moves in, and then they're bringing sod and whatnot on a finished driveway. So it's a lot of different ways to look at it.
So no action required on the board, right?
No, I think we'll make it work. Hopefully we'll have to
and
discuss it
definitely,
again.
the chairman is right as far as the banking aspect of it. When a person is finishing up the work, the bank calls the appraiser or an inspector to come out to verify that construction is complete, and that includes the driveway. So ultimately, the contractor will not get their final
Yeah.
draw.
That's a good
money.
point.
They're going to make sure the driveway
It
gets
is.
done. They're not going to be doing that and lose out on 10% of
Yeah.
what the ultimate remainder might be.
I guess if the bank finances a driveway, the bank wants a driveway, right?
They do. The bank gets a copy of the contract, and you've got covenants, HOA covenants as
Yeah.
well, which most of those require a driveway. But yeah, it's usually the way this plays out is me calling the owner going, hurry up, get moved in, get your shed, whatever you're going to do. I need to pour the driveway so I can
Yeah.
schedule the bank final inspection. It's just about giving the owners, because I really hate to go to them and say, got to do the driveway before CO, and if your concrete cracks, it cracks. Sorry, it's not my fault. I mean, that's what it would lead to, a bunch of silly stuff like that. And I like it to go all the way to the end, customer happy, having every option in the world. And again, I'm saying customer, but I'm talking public, the
Yeah.
people of Currituck. You hate to eliminate options for no good reason if there's other ways to go around it.
Now, that takes care of the timing aspect of it, but what about the
Now,
materials?
The
aspect?
shell sand, you can use shell sand right now. You just have to have the county engineer approve it on each individual case. It's clearly not efficient, and I doubt Eric wants to approve shell sand every time somebody wants to use it. So my thought is, if we want to add shell sand to that magical list of allowed materials, which then would allow the planners to approve those materials, I think we have to give Eric a chance to comment on, the county engineer a chance to comment on that. So if you'd like us to go back to Eric and really see and we could even have him come to the next meeting, but at the very least have him give us an opinion on when he thinks shell sand's appropriate and perhaps the conditions in which he thinks shell sand's appropriate, we could bring that back to you. Because now that would be something that if we would have to amend the ordinance. If we want to add that as just a standard material, we have to add that to the ordinance. So, but I would suggest before we make a final decision tonight, give us one more month to get Eric engaged, and he may say, yeah, no problem for residential, but in commercial applications, I need to see this type of thickness or whatever he wants to see. So,
And,
Don, do you have any?
No, I think that's
Okay.
fine, yeah.
Yeah. I'm referring to just residential. I understand with the traffic of commercial and vehicles stopping and turning wheels. I can see that.
And you got safety issues and other
Yeah.
stuff, handicap required parking.
Well, and most of the time, if folks do use a shell sand driveway, they're going to a concrete parking pad. So where they're turning their wheels and this kind of stuff, just in everyday normal application, you would typically see a concrete parking pad, concrete sidewalk to the front steps, and then just the stretch out to the road. But Eric could call me. I could show him a few shell sand driveways that look really nice.
Do they have culverts usually? The ones will the shell sand stay compact around a culvert? Will it have blowouts, or is it hard to compact it kind of on the down slopes of where a culvert is? Or
It packs in.
It's
Once it's set up, it is almost like it feels like you're
Grass
walking
and
on
right
concrete.
okay,
It's hard.
yeah. Can you grow grass? Can you vegetate?
grass will come right through.
So you can get it on the sides, on the side of the slope where the culvert is. You could get
Yes.
vegetation to stable. I mean, I think some of that's things that, because in Currituck, if you add in some of these subdivision ditches, if you add, I don't know, a 1-inch hill in the ditch, all of a sudden it can it starts leading to all this water back up because
Right.
I mean you may have 1 inch of fall over what's like quarter mile. I mean it's just crazy sometimes, and you know that, John, how like little fall there is sometimes. So we got to make sure we don't have. It's got to be stable. It's got to pack in tight. So
It does. It really does. It packs in. It packs in good. Like I say, we use it while the job is in progress, just to keep trucks from getting stuck. Big trucks and concrete dumpsters, all that. And in a 6-month process, I may call my grader out once or twice to regrade it, and that's with heavy duty traffic. It stays in place really good.
in the more conventional subdivisions, so say we're back in our like half-acre lots and the stuff we're seeing in Moyock, do most of those covenants require concrete driveways?
Yes.
Is that typically a driveway materials addressed in subdivision covenants?
In our neighborhood, we require concrete driveway, and most of the new subdivisions do. This would only be, for the most part, older lots that didn't have as restrictive of a covenants. Minor subdivisions maybe to where they don't have as restrictive a covenants, but most of the homes we build, the covenants, the HOA requires a concrete driveway. This would be more for older lots.
I could see it on larger lots or more rural areas where nobody wants to pour,
Lots behind
half a
other
mile of
lots.
concrete driveway or
Well, and
something.
I think that's covered already. It says less than 3 acres. So if the lot is 3 acres or bigger, there's no driveway requirement. But even on 1 acre lots, some of the older ones, like up and down Narrow Shores Road, there's very few driveways, period. They're just parking in the
Driving
grass. But not causing any issues that I know of. But the shell sand would be a major upgrade in that scenario.
Yeah, we'll talk to Eric, and maybe we'll bring if Eric's comfortable with it, then maybe we'll bring back some working language that you guys can look at.
Yeah, it may have to do with a minimum thickness and proper compaction. It does need to be a certain thickness, and that varies depending on what's underneath of it. But that's the same with anything, concrete or crushed gravel or whatever.
Around the bridge pipe, you could put some sod or whatever. I mean, no different than anything else, but it packs good unless you have a real driving rain right after it. You should be fine.
Yeah. If it stays above water, it stays right in place. But that's all I had on that, guys. Thanks for entertaining my drone-a-thon.
Good associate. Good information.
All right, so moving on, next for discussion is land use plan amendment.
So Donna is going to use the GIS online view. I didn't make a lot of maps for this ahead of time. I'm going to just pass this around. So this has been filed with the planning department, and I thought it's an interesting amendment. So I really wanted to kind of pick the planning board's brain before we even start processing this request. So we have a land use plan in Currituck County, the 2006 CAMA land use plan, and it lays out different designations. So you hear us reference full service, limited service, rural, and conservation. Those are important because those designations have a lot of impact on how you can rezone property. So if you're conservation, it's going to be very difficult to get heavy industrial rezoning, for example, because industrial and conservation generally aren't compatible. Another thing is these land use plan designations affect density of development, intensity. So there's a lot that goes in. It's very important. It matters to a lot in a lot of ways what your plans designate or what your property is designated in the plan. This is a tract of land on the, I guess we'll call it this kind of the south. I'm going to say the south side of the Intercoastal Waterway. When you cross the Quanjock Canal on the south side, if you're heading south, on the right it's mostly marsh and swamp and everything, but on the left you have Water Lily Road, and there used to be a property there called, I guess I've always heard it called the Fish Camp. I don't know if it had a different name, or if you guys remember where the Fish Camp was on Water Lily Road. It's some old buildings that were the county condemned and had torn down not too long ago. But that Fish Camp property is a piece of land, and Don, if you can turn on the land use plan classes, I think it's limited service and conservation primarily right now. The north side of the Intercoastal Waterway is actually designated as full service, I believe. So you can see that the properties that Donna have highlighted in red are the properties we're talking about. These folks approached Currituck County about doing a barge site there, and I've passed around some information, and what it is they would bring in aggregate materials on barges, offload them onto this property. Most of the uplands are on the upper side of the screen where the Fish Camp property was. Offload these aggregate materials, and from there they would take them to wherever they're needed. Now, one thing that they've are somewhat counting on is projects like the Mid-Currituck Bridge or the Bonner Bridge project. There's a couple of big bridge projects that are going to need a lot of aggregate. So one way to get the aggregate closer to the bridge is to barge it in, and then from the barge load it onto the trucks, and the trucks don't have to haul it quite as far as, say, coming from Hampton, Virginia, or wherever they come from. So they've made the request to come in and use this as a barge site. Well, we looked at it, and it's zoned agricultural, I believe. And the land use plan is really, conservation, like I said, just really isn't consistent with a barge site. You just don't put industrial uses in conservation areas typically. So what that does, it's actually general business, but still a barge site's an industrial use, so it would require rezoning to industrial. We advise the owners of the property or the purchasers of the property that if they came in and asked for an industrial zoning district, there's a lot of reasons why they've got to make a good case for that, but certainly the land use plan wouldn't support that and creates an immediate issue. So you understand the land use plan as a board. Whenever the Division of Coastal Management is required to issue what's called a CAMA major permit, one of the processes that the state goes through is they say, well, is this development that you've applied for this permit under, is this development consistent with the jurisdiction's local land use plan? I would suspect that the state, even if the county said, yeah, we're going to let you put a barge site in industrial zoning in a conservation area, I suspect the state would look at that and say, no, we can't issue a CAMA major permit because industrial use is not consistent with the conservation designation. So in my opinion, the only way to make this concept of a barge site there, and I think they've called it the Currituck Industrial Marina or Marina Industrial Park or whatever.
Waterfront Business Park.
Waterfront Business Park. It's a good name for it, I guess. But the only way to make that probably even begin to be permittable is to amend the land use plan. Land use plan processes, we've amended our land use plan twice since 2006. Both of those amendments were for marinas. One was on a property known as the Weber Tract that's in Jarvisburg, and the other amendment was some property behind Kilmarlock. Both those land use plan amendments were from conservation, I believe, to full service to allow marina projects. So this would be our third request we've received. It has to go through the Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners has to make a recommendation. Once the planning board would make a recommendation, the Board of Commissioners would make a decision. Once, if the county decides, yes, we're going to amend our land use plan to change this from conservation, and Don, if you can turn the zoning off, we're going to change this from conservation to full service to support this concept of a barge site there, aggregate storage facility. At that point, it goes to the state, and the State Coastal Resources Commission has to approve the land use plan amendment. So the Board of Commissioners, in and of themselves, can't change our land use plan. The state has to sign off on it. The CRC, everybody says Currituck County is slow, but the CRC only meets 4 times a year, and you've got to get on their agenda like 2 months before one of those quarterly meetings. So it takes, you take 6 months. Well, you got to do the 3-month local process, then you got to hit their calendars right. So it takes probably 6 to 9 months to get through this process. Then if the land use plan is approved, the amendment, then you got to rezone the property. So there's a whole cascade of things. It's very difficult to amend a land use plan and change the zoning of property when you put it all together in terms of process. So these folks approached the county, and I felt like in terms of due diligence and because of the expense and effort that it takes, it would probably be a good idea to give them some initial feedback on positives of the application, negatives, try to advise them properly as to whether or not they should proceed this type of development on this property. Now, Don, if you would zoom out a little more. So this actually gets to one of, and we've told them that, we've let them know we've got their application. We said we want to bounce this off the planning board to start to identify any concerns that may exist. Once we've done that, then we'll advise them and they can begin their process of moving forward. And it would then, let's say they continue to move forward. It comes to you at a future date as a request to amend the land use plan. You would make a recommendation, and then it would go to the Board of Commissioners. If you'll go out one more time, Donna. Maybe show it where it can show a little bit of the north end of the Coinjock Canal, the Intercoastal Waterway.
Is that on the main canal?
It is. So I want to give you a couple of things to think about. So if you look at that, like we said earlier, a lot of that's swamp. I mean, the maple swamps in that area, and there's a couple of ridges that are like narrow shores and the highway. But the Intercoastal Waterway is interesting because the way we've got it set up now is the county has the north side of the Intercoastal Waterway is full service and most of Coinjock, and then pretty quickly on the south side of the Intercoastal Waterway it turns to limited service. And Don, if you'll just tighten in right where the full and limited service areas are on the Intercoastal Waterway.
Right here?
Yep, right there. I want to just kind of, yep, perfect. So an observation for me, I always thought it was strange that one side of the Intercoastal Waterway was full service and one was limited service. I always thought that was interesting. So me, Ben Woody's planning director, feels like it's not entirely unreasonable for both sides of the Intercoastal Waterway to be either full service or limited service. So in that sense, at least, in some of this area you see on the subject parcel, particularly on the, I guess it'd be the east side of the Intercoastal, of the bridge, that is, a lot of that's uplands. Even though some of it shows as conservation, it actually is probably upland and developable land. I think on the west side of the bridge, most of that's really, truly probably wet, so that's a little different story. So I don't know that it's unreasonable for the Intercoastal Waterway to be full service on both sides, Because when you think about moving forward in the future, you ask yourself, well, what could this intercoastal waterway be? Could it be an asset for the county and for the citizens? Could it be an economic development tool? There will be a point in time if the Mid-County Bridge is built where this intercoastal waterway is, 10-minute drive from Corolla. So all of a sudden you start to look at that area a little bit differently. It has boat access, has obviously vehicular access. So I don't know that the whole concept of making that canal full service is bad. It probably makes a lot of sense. The question for you to think of as a board and as a community is, if that intercoastal waterway, if we start to think there's greater potential for that land, what is that? Is it industrial uses? Because one thing about Currituck County is we don't have we have very little deep water access. So if you were to ask us where could you have a barge site at, I'm not sure there's anywhere else other than this waterway you could have barge traffic that could actually, or have like an industrial type waterfront use. This is probably it, unless somebody knows something I don't, but there's just not a lot of good deep water access. But on the other hand, and what I think makes this difficult is the highest and best use when you think about some of the residential that's there, and you think about the fact that when you go over that bridge, you're going to see right down into this site. It'll be in your view shed. And the fact that we're in such close proximity to the bridge terminus and whatever that brings, is that full service better utilized as more of things like Coin Jock Marina or retail or tourist-oriented uses? Because industrial uses can have a fundamental impact on a community. But I mean, I would. That said, in fairness, there's some fuel type facilities. There's some industrial type uses that are already on that canal, and there's some retail residential uses too. So I think this is kind of a tough request to me, and I think a lot of it depends on how you look at that intercoastal waterway in the future and what the possibilities are. Now, if they did an industrial use, I think the staff would probably strongly advise them to screen it and to do things. I don't think you'd want to ride up Waterlily Road every day and look at a bunch of open aggregate disposal and things. Maybe you would, but I think most folks on that community probably don't want to see that. So I would entertain comments from this board tonight.
Seeing it.
I think that would be your biggest drawback from it is the vision. It would be visible from so many above Waterlily Road.
From the other side of the canal?
It's going to be, and on the right-hand side, I guess that's in the red area. They're interested in that as well, but in a lot of that wetlands, how much of that would they be able to use?
I don't think they would be able to use much of that. To me, I think it's primarily wet.
Right.
So I don't even know. Part of me would say I'm not sure that's even worth. I don't know if I would go to the Coastal Resources Commission taking a piece of land that's pretty much all wet and asking that to go from conservation. I'd probably narrow my scope to what really made sense. So
as far as what you're saying, the deep water access, you're right. That's very limited here in the county. It would be a good way to bring things in.
Yeah.
But I just don't know how that would be received right there in that area.
But Ben, my concern with, looking at highest and best use, you put this aggregate light industrial, all this material on there now, are you harming the other landowners that are on the canal, from being able to do more marinas or sell waterfront lots, once the bridge goes in? You've got maybe people in Virginia that want to bring their boat down there and pick up from there and go across to the beach.
yeah,
And so, I don't want to bring my nice 100-foot yacht and tie it up and look at the aggregate next to it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Ben, I agree. The full service, it doesn't make sense for that not to be on both sides.
Yeah.
But that's a major highway for boats right there, and it would seem a long-term plan is more of a general business aspect than industrial.
And the only, to me, exception would be to say put a time frame that while these two bridges, are going on, maybe you could do a limited light industrial that says 10 years or whatever time for bringing the materials in, but not forever, because like I said, if the bridge goes in, or let's put it better, when the bridge goes in, then I think that any property that's gonna be touching the boatable part of the intercoastal waterway along there is going to be, far more valuable than an industrial piece of land.
Well, with the right vision, you could see restaurants, condos,
Exactly.
driving over and seeing industrial, I really, it's an introduction to our county that people would remember, kind of like when you're driving into any
Well,
industrial part.
that's just driving automobiles down 168. I'm talking about bringing your boats in that way.
Yeah, that's right. Which they're doing currently with, especially in the fall and the
Yeah.
spring.
They just rebuilt the landing docking facility
Yep.
on Water Lily Road. It's
Yeah.
about maybe a half a mile north of the far
Plus-
right yellow area.
Plus, the other thing that you're going to have there is by turning that to industrial, the number of trucks that are going to be coming right into 168 right there, heading south, and, you're going to suddenly tell them, oh, well, you can't do it all summer because you already have too much traffic, for the beaches now.
Another issue is the redirection of the Water Lily Road entrance is supposed to occur near Idlet Road according to the NCDOT proposed plan for the Mid-Currituck Bridge. That Water Lily Road terminus will not be in that same location where it is now. It's proposed to go down parallel to Currituck Highway and come out near Idlet Road area.
Which is going to cause all those trucks to be right there where everybody's turning
I mean, it
off to
would
go to the bridge.
lessen traffic at the
Yeah.
foot of the bridge area. However,
It'll cause it more closer to,
I'm sure in the design, the NCDOT has proposed for the entrance to the gateway to the Mid-Currituck Bridge near Idlet Road. They've planned looks to be a cloverleaf type environment there where traffic moving to this Water Lily Road exit would not be detrimental to this particular area here as far as right there at the foot of the current bridge.
but it's going to throw it right into that
It'll be down
clover leaf. with
a mile
everybody
farther
else.
down, yeah.
Are there any benefits? I can't think of any, but
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, you'll have some job creation. I would say that this type of operation probably has some full-time employees to operate the site. There's an increase in tax base. Right now, there's no tax base on that property. So in fairness to them, yeah, there's some job creation, some tax base increase. But then, so yeah, I don't want to call them short term. There's some immediate benefits if this thing is built, but I think that your job as a planning board is to kind of maybe think about that in comparison to perhaps long term benefits of what could be there. So.
all you have to do is drive over the Monitor Merrimack Bridge and look at the coal piles.
Yeah, well,
Can't
yeah.
screen those.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what came to my mind when we're talking about industrial that you can see from the bridge, and you're 10 minutes from our new bridge heading to top 10 beaches in
Exactly right.
America, and it'd be nice to have a good view along the way.
And I don't even know about the depth of the water farther north. If you were to head north on your map near the road that comes off of the Water Lily Road area, if you go the other direction.
Your other north.
Yeah, the other north.
I gotta wait for it to reload.
Yeah, one thing Don and I were talking about is you see the tracks that are highlighted in red. Now, so on the south side of the intercoastal waterway, you see there's, I think his name's Levy Bunt. There's a piece of, and again, it's real visible too, but
There, on the other side.
yeah, maybe on the other side, if you had to do it, if you were going to do it, maybe if anything, it makes sense on the other side of the bridge, away from where. But the problem is access to the other side of the bridge. I don't know any way to get to it really.
I was talking about was where that road goes off to the left off of Water Lily Road, right there where your cursor is now.
I can't think of the
There's
name of that road,
camp
Goes back to Ponty
back there, the
Island.
hunting
Ponty
camp.
Island. Yeah.
They're very close to the mouth, or a greater area of width there, but I don't know about the depth. There'd be a whole lot of probably dredging that would have to occur in order to get that, but that would be an alternate location that would be kind of invisible to residents, more or less, because it is so far off of the road. They'd have to bulkhead. None of that's bulkheaded at this time, but you'd have to bulkhead it and dredge it. And it may even be too far into the 404 wetlands anyway to do anything with it at that location. But at least it would be near that body of water.
Are they talking about widening the cut? I mean, you're just not going to park a barge.
No,
on
they
the
actually
bulkhead, are they?
they actually went to the Army Corps and they have, I won't say a permit, but they have at this point written permission from the Corps that says that they can dock barges on the side of the canal.
I want to say right there by the bridge, the width of the canal
Yeah.
is 200 feet there.
Yeah, it's wider than you would think, and they can do it in a manner that doesn't interfere with navigation. So they've already got the Corps to additionally sign off on that. So
It narrows slightly
It's-
on the east side of the bridge. I think it's 150 feet
Which is-
there, near where the county owns the old Coast Guard.
yeah, which is amazing because the county can't get permission to rebuild that dock that sticks out like 10 feet into the canal, but they can get the.
But it is narrower there.
Maybe we need to get them to ask for us.
Yeah.
I want to say it's 150 feet right near the.
Yeah, I think
the
you're
old
right.
Coast
It
Guard
does- it does
station.
start to flare
And,
as it
and
goes
it's
under.
wider on the southwest side of the bridge.
I was kind of surprised they were able to get that, but yeah.
There's a lot of places.
I think, John,
Yes.
I think what John said is so very true, because with the Monitor Merrimack, your first introduction to Newport News, not only do you have the major industrial shipyards right there, you got the sewer plant right there.
Yeah.
And, so you come across the Monitor Merrimack either way, either direction, and you're hit by the sewer. Just squarely. And that's kind of, to me, what would start happening here. And look at the pamphlet and they say minimal dust. Well, you can bring in all this rock and all this dirt and all this whatever to build bridges. That's messy. And so, the wind's blowing the wrong direction. It's going to totally hit Coin Jock on the other side.
That's why they have to water the coal yards. They're
Exactly,
constantly spraying
exactly.
those things.
And there's no real other alternate locations off of Water Lily Road or South Water Lily Road, because the depth of the sound is only 3 to 4 feet on a good day. And with tidal and lunar fluctuations, it can be as low as nothing,
It's not
Out
really our job
500
to suggest
feet.
alternatives, is it?
and wind. But the Intracoastal Waterway is much different. There's always water there for the most part.
Is there any type of screening that could be, I'm thinking about Levy Bunch's piece over there that you could put when you're coming up, the bridge kind of turns. Is there any type of screening you could put on the bridge per se to?
It'd be almost as
Oh, like
ugly
they
as
do.
piles.
They do those sound barriers on the interstates.
It's
the
so-
concrete barrier.
it's just a
Yeah.
tough. I mean, all I could think is it's probably, I don't know how you screen it as much as if you could push the aggregate piles like into DOT's right of way, which they're not going to let you do that. So I mean, if you get them up close to the bridge, you wouldn't see it. But
Can't see it when you're looking.
yeah, I don't. I mean, there's really we'd all agree it's probably essentially impossible to screen it from the bridge. The best you can do is screen it from Water Lily or whatever secondary road you're on. But then you also have to say, just thinking a lot, if you get aggregate piles that are 20 feet tall, how long does it take the screen to get tall enough to screen it? So it's a.
But you'd have to actually
From grade
screen
level.
on the bridge, but
Yeah.
but then you're
The
losing
DOT,
the
yeah,
view
just-
that people might enjoy riding.
Yeah.
That and
Well, yeah, then
maybe
you-
some wind issues, weight, wind, lift.
So you cross the same bridge, they got a section there where they got a, fence. and a-
Yeah,
if you could
that's right.
Weave that stuff in it where you really couldn't. At other locations, just.
I think the concept is an interesting concept where we could utilize that main thoroughfare for industrial use, but I think that ultimately the location is probably not a good one.
Keep a lot of trucks off to that point, like I said, I just think of location.
I feel like that's something that Clay was kind of getting at the last meeting. You remember he kind of talked about trying to identify. I mean, there probably are areas in Currituck that are suitable for industrial development. That may not be water-based industrial. That could be on the rail line, or it could be like areas that have good truck access. I mean, we probably wouldn't be a bad exercise to start to think ahead of where those sites are that have the right infrastructure. But this is just one that's kind of come to us. So
Isn't there a old railroad line that goes all the way down the lower county?
not that I know of.
Okay, I
Yeah.
somehow know that.
So, kind of a lukewarm response. I've taken some notes. Any other comments or discussion on this, or about?
They don't have any option to go this side of the highway, right up close to the road, because, I mean, I'm just thinking there you could, come back into 168 at a little more of an angle.
We can ask
If that
or
wasn't
point that out.
wetlands, you could get it further down where you really wouldn't see it.
Right.
That wouldn't be bad, but I think all that's kind of,
It's low.
Yep, and
It's-
there's no bulkheading, there's all kinds of cypress out there. When you look down the canal, it's a mess. It would be hard to change that.
It doesn't seem like an ideal site for industrial. It's just very visible from the bridge. There's houses right there.
It's very
Up and
visible
down.
from all the lower part of Coin Jock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know the
biggest
people
site
who
do they
lived there
need
when the
then?
bridge was there.
I'm not sure if I know how big of a site they need. Lori, they haven't really indicated how big they need, so I don't know if I can answer that. I'm trying to think if it
Another alternative could be the offload point, but not the ultimate area where it gets situated.
Yeah, true. Maybe offload.
Could
but not
unload there by
stockpile.
cranes or other mechanism in order to get it there, and then be transported to another location
haul it somewhere else.
to hide it better.
Yeah.
But you're talking about more impact from truck traffic that way?
There's going to be truck traffic either way if it's
When you're
industrial.
constantly moving it to get it out of sight, you're even, upfront truck traffic.
It's about 24 and a half acres, these two parcels right here. That doesn't seem to be the case. They may have it incorrectly identified on here because they've got this one listed as 21, but it may be tied to something across the street.
I imagine a fully loaded barge
Because
would
they have
need
access
probably
to, the river.
15 feet of draft in order to navigate.
Access,
Yeah.
pull the barge around, load it.
They probably are actually in the water maybe 10 feet, but in order to have, other than there, really.
If you
Everywhere
North
else
River
is
access
2 to
is on
4
the whole
feet.
mainland.
Right.
And if the wind's blowing wrong, it may be 0 or it may be 8 feet. Compound it with lunar tides and you've really got a problem.
So that they're not at any site plan stage or anything, I guess. Just
real early in this. I mean, now I'll say they've approached some of the commissioners, the county manager, the economic development director. So they're definitely kind of making a pitch for this. But we haven't gotten into like any engineering work and that's why I felt like it's probably better to start to give good feedback to these folks so they can make a good decision early on.
And if it were to be just a dump location where they actually extract the materials out of there and load things, NCDOT would probably have to improve Water Lily Road anyway, at
Yeah.
least southward from that point. And if it's going to be rerouted anyway because of the new bridge intersection near Idlet, it's going to be improved anyway. So that may be 2 birds with 1 stone, so to
Yeah.
speak. It will already or will have already been done.
Those tree parcels that are marked off on the, I guess the
Less
southwest
visible.
side, Are they, I mean, is there any homes or farm or anything over there? They're just pretty private parcels.
It's pretty wet.
Have they talked with any other property owners around that area, or? I was just
Yeah,
thinking about
they
what he
had
was-
they had a little community meeting. Now we don't require a community meeting for a land use plan amendment. We suggested that they go out and talk to people first. So I don't know how far their notice was, but they only had 4 people show up to the meeting, and they did. I think there's some notes in the packet, but I think even those 4 expressed some concern about the view and the visibility, and just kind of the idea of an industrial site. And I think most of those folks lived on the other side of the canal from it. So
I was just thinking about what he was just talking about, if they could unload it there and just,
yeah,
if those folks across the road were interested, you could buffer that where you wouldn't be as visible.
Yeah.
It'd be just across the street. But they may not want to set it, I'm just
yeah.
talking, they wouldn't have to move it forward.
Is the idea, Ben, that it would be a material coming in on barge and then pick up on truck and leave, or is it off one barge onto another? Or?
No, it comes in on barge, is offloaded onto the land, and then it's moved to like a truck. So yeah,
Okay.
it's from barge to land to truck.
And just what we need on Highway 168 south of Currituck is more trucks.
Yeah, I mean, if not for the bridge being right there, you probably could have a neat operation there with the canal and all. It's just,
That right away is
Screens
probably
and-
200 feet for the bridge at least.
yeah, I mean, screening and
Kills
buffers
a lot
is
of that
always
area right there.
a big deal with commercial, especially industrial, and it's impossible to effectively do it when you're looking down on it. All right, well,
And
thanks
I'm-
for the heads up.
And I'm sure as far as truck traffic goes, there's no real alternative by putting the aggregate on a barge and attempting to get it to the location of the proposed bridge or the construction of Oregon Inlet. It wouldn't be possible because of the depth of the sound in those areas. You got to transport it by vehicle.
There's a barge site in Kitty Hawk, so this would actually compete. I don't remember the name of it, but whatever the barge site is in Kitty Hawk, this would probably compete with that.
Didn't Outer Banks put that in years ago?
Where's that located, Ben?
Is it? Where's that? Okay, I was thinking it was back in the village.
But it would almost seem like it would be more practical to come in from the Elizabeth City side and coming down Albemarle Sound. Even if it crossed through the Currituck Sound there and then located somewhere on the west side of the mainland.
Yeah.
I just think there's gonna be so much change in that whole area with the bridge coming in and with the traffic and everything like that, that to just add more, to me, just doesn't make sense. Whether you're adding it to the new cloverleaf for the bridge or, however you're doing it there. I mean, if you just came on through the whole canal there and put it somewhere on the west side of the lower Currituck, you would have less distance for the trucks to go. You would be out of the way of the new bridge itself, but you could go back up to the new bridge if you've got material for that.
Water depth is the issue.
It's just the water depth is so shallow.
On the south side of the intercoastal canal.
We're on the west side of the Currituck Peninsula. It's the North River and Albemarle Sound. It's just
Yeah.
sometimes when the wind blows, you can walk, I don't know, quarter of a mile out into the sound.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you can walk from Currituck over to the beach too.
At least drive a monster truck.
Yeah. That's been done
Yeah. Yeah, he was
a
full.
long time ago, though.
Oh,
Well, it's interesting. All right, so when will we see something else about this?
If they decide to move forward, then you'll probably see it in June or probably more likely July.
Okay.
Probably take a couple of months because it's a monumental effort to prepare the staff report to do this because the Division of Coastal Management makes you have to answer all these questions and do all this analysis. And I think those staff reports for the marinas, and I don't mean I mean the written staff reports are like 14 or 15 pages, so they get real dense. So I don't know that we could even have it ready by June.
Right. By that point, would there be more specifics about the operation and a site plan and things like that?
Yeah, we will. I just didn't want to make him do that until we had more understanding of the obstacles. So, no, I think we've told them that if they move this forward, well, all they really need to do is just show green turning to orange. I think they need to show a site plan so people really understand what the impacts would be of this land use.
Well, there's a lot of definitions of marina.
Yeah.
The industrial use aspect of it seems out of place.
Yeah.
But, I'm limited on information, and none of us, they deserve the due diligence that everybody gets, but.
But they've got some talent, some things they need to probably be prepared to address is what I can go back to them with.
Yeah. Yeah, visual aspect of it and how it's going to impact people across the canal and neighboring homes there. More specifics about their operation, I guess.
Yeah, just kind of community's vision, long-term vision for that canal and that property. So
Yeah.
It's a shame that parcel that's on the northwest side of the Intracoastal Waterway doesn't have road access.
it really is. That's what
That would be
Don
a
and I were
great
talking about.
location.
That would be so much better. Not ideal, but better. A
Yeah.
lot better than this one. So
I don't know. I think that is around 50 acres there, I think.
yeah, the problem with that is you got to drive through Coinjock to get to it. That's not going to fly running
Where
truck
Guard
traffic.
Road would be
Yeah,
rough, and then you had to worry about the access from
Yep.
the end of Worth Guard Road coming south.
yeah.
All right, so we'll wait until we see what's next on that. Next item of new business, C, discussion, land use plan update and exercise.
So we were going to walk you through an exercise, give you an overview of the land use plan, and we were ready to do that. But my question is, you're missing 3 planning board members. This isn't time sensitive, so would you like to do that tonight? Which is fine. We're ready to do it, or would you like to have closer to a full board to go through that exercise?
I think if you guys and us are going to go through the time, it's a better bang if everyone's here.
That's what
If it's not time sensitive.
It's not. So in the land use plan process, we're just kind of gearing up to start our public input phase. And so we're kind of looking at the planning board as almost like a stakeholder group. We just want to get you involved a little bit. But I don't know. I don't want to do it 2 months in a row. So I feel like if we're going to, let's do it, or if we want to have your full board, let's wait maybe to next month and do it then. So
next month.
And perhaps send out an email that says we're going to be doing this important thing.
yeah, maybe that. And Stephen will be like your 4th time sitting through it, but
You know about
I could probably do the thing for you.
you probably could.
If you want to, please feel free.
Well, I'm curious to see it, but this is a good team we have, and it's all about everybody having the same information. So it'd be better to try again next month.
Okay. Yeah, because
Exercise is really interesting because with everybody being from different areas, the answers you come up with at the end, just like we did at the Land Use Plan Steering Committee meetings, it's varied but so very similar at its core.
But I thought you guys would be interesting as a group because you represent different areas of the county, but you know each other and you know how to communicate together. Whereas your land use plan committee, you guys are all kind of strangers, so maybe a little bit guarded, maybe not. But I feel like as a planning board, y'all will be interesting
There's a
because you
few.
work well together.
There's
you
a few are
communicate
not so
well.
guarded, but there's a
Yeah.
few
So,
that
but I
are.
think that's good though. It gives. I
Yeah.
mean, I feel like I was disappointed that we were missing some members. So I'm actually glad you guys are willing to.
Does that
Postpone
sound good,
it.
Stephen? You know more about this than any of us.
It would be beneficial for staff and also our land use plan steering committee to have the additional answers that you all will provide with the exercise, because that's a totally different group of people who are already familiar with the land use plan and some of its positives and negatives that we currently have with it. And many of us have been here long enough to have seen changes that have occurred since our tenure here. So I think it would be better served if we were to wait when we have more attendance, even though this is not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll email out and kind of stress attendance at the next meeting.
So in case you forgot, it's mandatory. Unless you're really bad.
If Susan, and I'm not promising this, but I'm gonna put this out there, and if Susan lets me, we might
Dinner?
even, if we don't have an agenda item like a public hearing item, then maybe, and I don't think we will. Maybe the next meeting we could maybe start at 6 or 6:30 and maybe have a little food or something.
Hey,
Awesome.
Maybe feed you guys.
Bribery, it
Everybody
always
come
works.
for the
Everybody
food,
will
man.
show up.
We're at
Past
the end of the
members,
budget
everybody.
year, so if I can get away with it,
John Wright will show up.
John Wright, yeah.
maybe we'll do a little food at the next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Hey,
I didn't mark.
I am going to pass out,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, this fact sheet that the consultant Destination by Design has put together for us. And this is a draft, but it gives you an idea of where we are in the process, some of the things that we're going to be doing, background information, and it also gives you, imagine Currituck and the logo. The logo will probably change somewhat. Once again, this is a draft, and we've got some input from the steering committee. So I'm going to just pass these down, and you can look at it, and if you guys have any feedback on it, but that kind of gives you an idea of where we are in the process and what we've done so far.
it's definitely a complicated amount of work that has to be done in order to review, make suggestions, go through the process. And the 12 members that we have with the Land Use Plan Steering Committee all are from different areas. Everybody has their own agenda, so to speak, about their own area. They want to protect their own area and look like the hero in their own area for suggesting certain things that will benefit them. And it's complicated, there's no doubt about it. We do have a good land use plan as it is right now. I think it has hit on a lot of areas that were abused in the past, but now more regulated. But there's still some other ones that can be tweaked within it.
All right, well, considering we'll wait on the land use plan update and exercise until next meeting, are there any announcements? Anybody?
Our last land use plan steering committee meeting went well. The folks from Destination by Design were not in attendance at our last one. That one was held at the Moyock Library. The upcoming meeting will be held in Corolla at the Hampton Inn. Is that the name of it, right? At the Hampton Inn on May 23rd. And anyone is available to attend if they choose to.
At
You-
night or what?
It would be at 6:15, I think it was.
6:15 meetings and stuff.
6:15?
So you're welcome to come, and generally there's a little bit of grub there where you can go for the free food anyway, right?
Yeah, right.
But some of the things we talked about last meeting were the theme Imagine Currituck, as well as on that paper that you were just handed, some of those items that are on there about part of the planning process. We recently were given homework to do over the last week, and we had to submit our homework by today, where we were to propose 3 to 5 questions pertaining to the questionnaire that will be given online to the public. So the public will answer questions that we have created and submitted and had answers. And they'll also be able to have more than likely fill-in areas where if they don't agree with an answer that we have, that they can fill in and put their own comments in about some of those questions. And it'll be about a 10 to 15 minute time frame, more or less, that they'll be given to. I mean, they can take as long as they want, but the process would probably take 10 to 15 minutes to take this survey. And that will help us to understand better what the public's perception is of what the needs are for the county.
And how does the public find out to take it?
We're going to be going out to the public. There's also going to be videos that are going to be recorded by the planning staff, where the Land Use Plan Steering Committee members who volunteer will be able to go into their area of the county and talk about what their vision is for Currituck, imagining Currituck in the future. And those will be available on the website and also YouTube. So that's kind of the gist of what's happening in the background.
The big difference is the survey will be out for several months. We're going to have it out for a while, give people plenty of time to take it, but we're going to try to do non-traditional means for the county and use social media and other platforms, and beyond just posting some, because the county has a Facebook page, but we're actually going to try to pay money and boost messages and try to actually put effort and financial resources into using the electronic world to get this out. Now, we'll still do the old tried and true, put things in the library, just try to spread the word through word of mouth, or the e-goose and the focus on Currituck and all that stuff. But we're really going to try hard to use other non-traditional means of communication to engage people.
And we're putting an onus on the steering committee members to, like, in their social circles, make sure that this gets out. All your email list groups that you have, push this out. So that's not just going to be me badgering people. It's going to be the steering committee members as well, badgering people who take this, get their opinion heard.
And I think it's very important for the public to be in participation with the plan's development. Most everyone who comes here to visit us has an opinion about what they believe should be happening in their area or should not be happening, and this is definitely a chance for them to put that opinion out there for the county to know.
And ideally, I think we're going to end up having 2 surveys, one more lengthy survey for residents and property owners, and then maybe maybe 10-question survey for visitors. If people on vacation, they're not going to want to take a 40-question survey.
Right.
Like 10 minutes, do 10 questions. Give me like 2 minutes of your time, and that's in the plans as well. Like I said, we're really going to push social media using Facebook and Twitter. So if you're a social media user, follow the Currituck County government, and you'll see some stuff. We've started posting factoids about some of the demographics information that has come out during the land use plan research period. So we're going to have some cool pictures and stuff. The consultant took some really nice pictures. So follow that, and if you guys don't mind sharing, once we get to that point with the survey, I'm going to call on you guys as well to share in your social circles.
All right. Any other announcements? All right. Thank you for your time and serving on that committee. Sounds like a lot.
My pleasure. One more thing to do. Put it on the list,
In your free time.
Yeah.
All right, take a motion for adjournment.
Motion adjourned.
Second motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. See you next
All
time.
right, yes, sir.